Hello, I'm Tyler Harp, and I'm a technical product lead for row crop fungicides based in Greensboro, North Carolina. Today, I'd like to give you a short update on our plant health fungicides and show you how they are the best tool available to preserve yield potential in your corn or soybean crop. As I think you'll see, these new Syngenta plant health fungicides are not your father's or your grandfather's fungicides. You know, they often say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but this particular picture is worth 9 bushels per acre, because that's exactly what this grower received when they applied a Syngenta plant health fungicide like Miravis Neo at VTR1 in comparison to untreated strips in the field, even in the absence of any visible disease. You know, I took this photo myself when I went to visit tar spot trials in Wisconsin in September of 2022. These particular plots were set up to evaluate tar spot, but unlike the year before in 2021, which had really severe tar spot, in 2022, the weather conditions dried out during that critical time of sort of late July to early August, making it not conducive for tar spot or any other disease for that matter to spread into this field. So many fields that didn't get tar spot in 2022 that were devastated in 2021, and this is really one of those fields. Now, even though we didn't find any tar spot or any visual disease in this field, we could still see a tremendous difference in the vigor of the plots treated with the Syngenta plant health fungicide compared to the plots that were left untreated. So let's look a little bit closer, and one of these things you'll see right away is the vigor of the canopy. So when you look down the row of the untreated row on the left, you see some of these mid-level leaves that are completely laying down. You know, they're exposing only a small layer of leaves on the top that are still open and providing energy, but the mid-level canopy are all hanging down. If you look at the right side in the photograph where the Syngenta plant health fungicide Miravis Neo is used, even though there's no disease, you do see a more robust mid-level canopy. Those leaves contain more water, they have more water conservation, and therefore they're able to continue to produce energy for this plant. And the reason they have more water is because Syngenta plant health fungicides like Miravis Neo or like Trivapro that contain the new carboxamide chemistry, this new generation plant health chemistry, are able to actually reduce the transpiration rate in these leaves while maintaining high levels of PS2 efficiency. In other words, they're high levels of photosynthetic efficiency, but with more water conservation. It essentially allows these leaves to minimize the water vapor loss from the stomata of the leaf and allowing a bit more water conservation. Another thing you'll notice in the untreated is that in the bottom leaves, you start to see this mid-vein necrosis. This is very characteristic of nitrogen deficiency. Now, it's not uncommon for a crop at this development stage. We're looking at basically late R4, maybe early R5. It's not uncommon for these plots to start to run out of nitrogen at this time in the field, but you don't see this in the Miravis Neo treated plot, and this is because we have better water and nutrient use efficiency. Since water is the vehicle that carries nutrients throughout the plant, if you have water use efficiency, you can get some nutrient use efficiency as well, and we can visually see that difference in these two plots. Another observation you can make is that the stalks are much healthier in the treated plot than the untreated plot. You can look at some of the stalks really closely and see that there's much better and greater stalk quality in the treated plots, because plants that undergo stress, whether it's biotic or abiotic stress, whether it's stress from disease or stress from environmental conditions, the leaves will pull starches out of the stalks and compromising the integrity of that stalk, which then results in lodging or can result in a slower and less efficient harvest for the grower at the end of the season. So the Syngenta plant health fungicide is essentially preserving the yield potential by maintaining a greener leaf, by conservation and efficiency of water and nutrients, and by improved stalk quality, which will lead to a more productive harvest. We also see differences in the ears when we pulled back and looked at some of the ears. There's differences in tip fill. We got a much more robust and greater tip fill where the plant health fungicide was used, because that crop was able to more efficiently maximize nutrients and water and conserve more energy used for grain fill. Syngenta, we test our Syngenta plant health fungicides every year since we've launched the product. We've generated a lot of data looking at the average difference in yield between treated and untreated in numerous locations throughout the Corn Belt. Now, when you evaluate this data across 3 to 5 years, the results show a consistent and profitable yield when a fungicide like Miravis Neo is simply applied at that VTR1 application. You know, we didn't make this as a situational decision in these plots. Maybe it's going to be dry or maybe it's going to be wet. Should we apply or shouldn't we apply? We just made the application every year. So we have the data that shows what it would be like if you just incorporated one of these Syngenta plant health fungicides as part of sound agronomic practice and not made as a situational decision every year. So if we look at this data in another way, you know, because again, we do these trials every year and not just when we think there'll be wet conditions or dry conditions or heavy disease or low disease, because we test products in several locations across the entire Corn Belt every year. So if you go back 5 years and you compare the driest year, which happens to be 2020, based on the 100-year average rainfall from June through August, and the wettest year, which was 2021, again, based on the 100-year average in June through August, you can see that 2020 was about 15 to 20% below the 100-year average across the Corn Belt, and 2021 was about 15 to 20% above average. Now, maybe you can recall that tar spot between these 2 years. Tar spot was almost non-existent in 2020, but came out like a vengeance in 2021. So we do know that these wet conditions can impact the disease severity. But however, in 2020, we still had almost 100 large-scale plots in the driest part of the Corn Belt, and we still averaged almost 15 bushels per acre. And if you look at the data individually, you'll see that 80% of those applications were profitable, and about a third of those were 20 bushels or more, even in the driest year we've had over the last 5 years. Now in 2021, we had more rainfall, we had more disease, and our average yield over the untreated for both Miravis Neo and Trivapro was higher than that, closer to a little over 17 bushels, because that disease can add some yield limitation that the fungicide can help prevent and preserve yield in the presence of, but it's not the only factor that these plant health fungicides are preserving yield. It's also about abiotic stress, such as drought conditions or dry weather. So if we look closer at the actual data points from these exact same 97 trials that I presented before on the previous slide that averaged over 14 bushels per acre from 2021 during the dry conditions on what we call a piano chart, where each of these bars represents the difference in yield for one of those 97 locations for 2020 that were spread out, you know, throughout the Corn Belt in really dry conditions. Again, what we observe is that, again, even under these dry conditions, 80% of the applications resulted in a profitable return, with about a third of those at 20 bushels or more. In fact, some were even over 30 bushels per acre. Now again, this just demonstrates the power of these Syngenta plant health fungicides to preserve yield potential, a massive amount of yield potential across the Corn Belt when these products are used as part of a robust agronomic practice and not as a situational decision to try to time against disease or weather conditions. It's kind of like timing against the stock market. It's always better to stay invested, and you always end up with a better return than if you try to time the stock market and if you try to make it a situational decision. So to summarize, a Syngenta plant health fungicide remains the best tool in the market today to preserve yield potential in the presence of both disease and environmental stresses that can impact the genetic potential of your crops. We have hundreds of data points over the last 5 to 7 years across the Corn Belt and differing weather environments showing that these products can result in a profitable investment over 80% of the time, often providing 20 bushels or more of extra yield. If being a successful farmer is about risk mitigation and the management of odds that will maximize the value of your farm business and the value of the decisions you make on your farm, so as the best tool available in the market today for preservation of yield potential, a Syngenta plant health fungicide will only serve to increase your odds of success and ensure you're getting the most out of your corn and soybean fields. Remember, cleaner and greener Syngenta plant health fungicides. Thank you very much.